Welcome back, everybody, to today's fantastically exciting episode of the A to Z of Property Strategies with the amazing David Clouter. Now, David, where are we up to? What are we doing? And has anything happened in your life recently?
We are absolutely ploughing through this, and we should break a new barrier today and move from the letter R inexorably with a bit of luck, because we've only got a few more to do to the letter S. You never know. So fingers crossed, this will be a milestone.
Excellent. So we're approaching the end of the alphabet. I can feel the ski slope down and out.
What are we going to do when we get to Z or Z?
Yeah. And if you'd like us to publish the A to Z of Property Strategies in a book, drop us a comment below. And if you haven't already, please share with your friends and give it a bit of thumbs up like juice. David loves a thumbs up, and he also loves it when you subscribe to the channel. So, David, take us away with the R's.
Right, well,
Sorry,
the next
R's.
R that we have is the retirement interest-only mortgage, sometimes known as a lifetime mortgage.
Yes, they have a good reputation, don't they?
Well,
Or can do.
The good side, you see, all of these things in property have pros and cons, don't they? The good thing is that you get this big wad of money for your home, and you don't have to pay any interest on it for as long as you live. So that's kind of quite a good thing. The bad thing, as far as your heirs are concerned, is that the mortgage interest is rolling up and accruing, and then you're paying interest on the interest, and da-da-da. So, I don't know, if you live to be 90 and you take this out at 60 or something, then there'd be not much left of equity in the house to pass on to your heirs and so forth. But if you don't have any heirs, and if you don't want to leave it to the cat's home, then, that's a real possibility, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And it goes back to what we said before about compounding and compound interest strategies. Effectively, this compounding is working against you and in favour of the lender. And it can sort of erode your capital value from the property. However, it's very good if you can release the cash, not just to live on, but to invest some of it and get a greater return than the cash that you are or have locked up in your principal private residence. Now, I know David's spoken about selling your own home and buying investment properties and living in a rental property. This is a way that you keep your own home, release the cash, and invest in rental properties. Now, I'm not giving this as investment advice before anybody starts dropping a rant below in the comments box. This here is purely for your consideration and to take appropriate financial advice from an independent financial advisor or appropriate qualified person.
And before we move on, there was a case, I think these are more common on the continent, on continental mainland Europe, and I remember reading about a case in France where the lender passed on before the borrower. So there you go.
Wow. out surviving your lender. That's pretty impressive.
Indeed, because this was it was done on that kind of basis, but it was a personal thing which then disappeared. So how about that? The best of both worlds, as it were. Shall we move on?
Absolutely. What do we have coming up next?
This is the last of the R's, and so R is for a risk, and there's always a balance, isn't there, in property and in life and in investment and all these kind of things between risk and its old antonym, is it? Divorce. Not divorce. What do I mean? I mean risk and reward. Let's keep the D word out of them. My goodness me. We don't really tempting fate here. So, in general, the things with the higher reward tend to come with an associated risk, and in a sense, especially when these things are done professionally, the higher reward is offered as a result of the higher risk in the thing. So again, it's a question of all that glitters isn't necessarily gold. So you might, for example, I don't know, be looking at a new city or town where you're thinking of investing, and you might find that in one of these areas in this town, for a single let property, you're getting a 15% return, something like that. I mean, and there are certainly places like this, and you don't have to travel far away. And then my recommendation in these kinds of things is this thing of there's never such a thing as a free lunch. So if I saw something like that, and it may well be the case that is the case, then I would really want to drill down hard on that area to see what was going on. Have I got a crack den next door? That would be question one, I think, really. And I've walked around properties with needles on the floor, and I think you have to be very careful when these agents are showing you around. And that's a no-no for me. And yes, the yields are phenomenal telephone number, but you only get paid when not monthly, but sort of every 3 or 4 years when they feel like it. So kind of the actual reward isn't that high. And I do remember the first room, the first HMO room that I ever let out in London, which was in the very early 1980s. So they weren't called HMOs then, and this fella came along and he offered me a good kind of, I think the room was £35 or something. He said, I want this, I'll give you 50. I thought, wow. And that was my first ever HMO room let, and I remember that guy for a long time because, of course, he paid for about 3 weeks and then made excuses for the rest of his tenure. So again, this is the thing that sometimes the reward conceals for some reason a very big risk, and you get excited and you jump in there and you come to regret it.
Well, I'll give a specific example that I used as a case study last month. On 28th of October 2020, to date when this advice was given, there was an auction by Clouter Auctions. And they had an auction lot in there, which was a whole shopping centre available to buy for just over £1 million. And the rent roll was £553,000. So we're talking a 55% or just slightly under return on investment. Now, risk versus reward, the risk is it's a shopping centre. So the tenants of that shopping centre could go into CVAs, corporate voluntary arrangements, where they basically put themselves into an administration type arrangement to negotiate with their creditors, who are predominantly the landlord. And you will have seen this with Debenhams and other stores prior to their demise, where they attempt to get rents reduced, waived, or other. And if you think about the landscape at this moment in time, the risk is, are retailers going to survive the COVID-19 pandemic, where because of changing purchasing habits, people are not able to go to restaurants and coffee shops as much, and they're also not shopping on the high street. They're tending to buy online. So a lot of the stores that were there are going to disappear. So the risk and reward relationship was factored in that particular example. So there's an example of your risk and reward. And also you have to look at things like interest rates and the effect that has on the risk of the investment. Obviously, inflation erodes the interest rate, i.e. makes it cheaper and increases potentially the asset price, but also the liquidity. And I've come across a lot of people who've invested in property and then gone, I've got no cash, because they've become illiquid because it's all transferred into tangible assets which have no access to that capital until the value's gone up or the rent's come in to sufficient level to release your principal capital that's locked in. So considerations for your risk-reward relationship. Sorry, David, I went off down a manhole there with that one, didn't I?
It's an excellent one, because do you remember, it's about a year ago that you and I and a couple of other friends did a little event in London where we were giving all our predictions for 2020. All of us thought long and hard about it, and there were some real sort of giants of the world of property, plus us two sitting in the corner. Yes. And
Niall's just putting a link up here for you to the video as well.
absolutely so. And so we all thought long and hard about what we were having. We gave long considered, reasoned arguments about what we thought was going to be going on. And what happened? We were all 100% wrong. And why? Because a little thing happened in March that sort of put the whole country into lockdown. Well, that's not something that you tend to do in your end of year review because it's a once in a century event. So there we are.
Yeah, that was a good forecast, that one was.
It was indeed. It was indeed.
Generally speaking, though, most of the things were coming true and will continue to come true on the basis that the COVID is a spike, which is an unusual, extraordinary activity.
That's it. And I think we've reached the end, haven't we?
Oh, we might be able to squeeze one more in, do you think? I don't know how long we've got for the next one. Do you think it's a biggie or a smallie?
This is a smallie, and so let's do this
give
one.
Give them a bit of
extra
value.
It's no longer strictly kosher, as the expression goes, but and in fact, but it was very, very popular. And our good friend Simon Zucchi, in previous editions of his book, had a whole chapter about it. That book, the wonderful and super, and if you tilt it a bit, I'll be able to see it without any glare. Property Magic, that's the one. Do recommend you go out and get a copy, get 2 copies and one for a friend, and have a good old read of that. In the current editions, it's no longer in there, sadly, but that's because legislation has changed. And the reason it's changed, and the reason legislation always changes, is because of the cowboys who get the industry a bad name. And so sale and rent back used to be the thing whereby somebody would come along to often an elderly or vulnerable person, and they'd say, look, I'll buy your house, I'll give you all this money, and then you just carry on living there and rent it to me for a peppercorn rent. So, what have they got to lose? Well, nothing. They've lived in that house all their lives. It seems like a real win-win. And, they get to live there for the rest of their lives. And they get more money than they would get on one of these aforementioned retirement mortgages or lifetime mortgages, as they say. Now, this all unravelled when, 3 months into this new agreement, they would give you a notice to quit. And they would evict you. So that was disgusting. And it wasn't many people doing it. It wasn't widespread, but it was really bad in terms of the people who did it. So it's not illegal as such, but it's so heavily regulated now that, as far as I know, nobody does it anymore.
Yeah, you need to be FCA regulated in order to offer to do a sale and rent back agreement. And not many people in the property industry are FCA regulated for that specific product. I'd call it hen's teeth, as rare as.
But you see, they're always raised round these things, and one perfectly legal thing you could do, because, if you are, like Andrew and I, in the business of helping people, then if you bought the house of these people, it would be quite legal for you to rent one of yours, which might be near identical to theirs, that's nearby. And especially if it's one of these sort of terraced or semi or something, one of these where they rolled out millions of these things, you could probably find something near identical that you could rent to these people after you'd bought theirs. But I do ask that if you did that, you were a good guy and you don't do any dirty tricks and evict them or anything like that, because we like to play clean, don't we? Not dirty.
Totally. You've got to do the right thing. You've got to do ethical business and, well, stay away from the bandits and the cowboys.
Well, absolutely. My spirit guides told me to always behave ethically in property.
Absolutely. And on that note, David, I think we've come to the end of today's show. We've discussed all sorts of things, including the ever-popular book from Simon Zucchi, Property Magic. We'd encourage you, if you've not already, give David a thumbs up and drop him a comment below about some of the content we've discussed here, what your views are on sale and rent back. Should it be brought back? Were the legislators overly zealous in regulating that particular sector, or did you have a bad experience? But for now, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
See you on the next video.